मैं बिग फाइट के प्रायोजकों को पहले अभिनंदन करना चाहता हूं, क्योंकि गत सोमवार तक, लास्ट मंडे तक, हिंदुस्तान का मीडिया अनेक कारगुजारी के बावजूद भी इस्लामिक टेररिज्म ये शब्द उपयोग करने का कभी साहस नहीं करता था, क्योंकि उनका सूडो सेकुलरिज्म इतना उन पर हावी था कि सत्य बोलने की इनकी हिम्मत नहीं थी। कल मंगलवार को, लास्ट मंगलवार को, जब दुनिया के अखबार ये लिखने लगे अमेरिका की घटना के बाद, तब पहली बार, और मैं राजदीप के इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया है। जहां तक इस्लाम का सवाल है, उसके बहुत अच्छे पहलू है। आज जो लोग हैं वो इस्लाम का किस रूप से उपयोग कर रहे हैं, ये सवाल है। मूलभूत तत्व कहां पड़े हैं? जिस समय एक संप्रदाय ये कहता है कि मेरा संप्रदाय आपसे अलग है, ऊंचा है, जब तक तुम मेरे शरण में नहीं आओगे तब तक तुमको मोक्ष नहीं मिलेगा, अल्लाह नहीं मिलेगा, जीसस नहीं मिलेगा, तब कॉन्फ्लिक्ट शुरू होता है। और मैं मानता हूं विश्व के अंदर हिंदुस्तान ने यह विचार दिया है, एकम सत विप्राहा बहुधा वदंती, ट्रूथ इज वन, सेज इज कॉल्स इट इन अ डिफरेंट वे। ये मूलभूत चिंतन अगर रहा कि जगत के सब धर्म समान है, तब कोई कॉन्फ्लिक्ट नहीं है। लेकिन जब मैं ये कहता हूं कि तुम्हारा निकम्मा है, मेरा सही है, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट शुरू होता है और हेट्रेड पैदा होती है। और उस हेट्रेड आगे चल करके जब साम्राज्यवाद से जुड़ती है, तब आतंक फैलता है। 1400 शताब्दी से पूरे विश्व में अपना झंडा फहराने का चला, और उसी का नतीजा है कि आज ये स्थिति आई है। इसलिए इस्लाम एक आइडियोलॉजी को गाली गलौज करने के बजाय आज जो तत्व उसका दुरुपयोग कर रहे हैं, उस पर फोकस करना ज्यादा अच्छा हो।
Mr. Modi, your time is up. We haven't used the word Islamic terrorism. We've only raised the question, but so we don't need the compliments from you at the moment. But Dr. Zakaria, respond to Mr. Modi.
नहीं, मैं हिंदी में बोलूँ या
English, please.
हिंदी में?
English, please.
English में? Well, I would have liked to have replied in Hindi, but you know, this is the outcome of the Muslim phobia, which unfortunately hasn't left people like Mr. Modi. I'm very sorry to say that. Simply because some media in the United States called what happened last Thursday, as far as the bombing of the New York buildings and the Pentagon, that for the first time the Indian media has realized that it is Islamic terrorism. Now, what has Islam to do with whoever is responsible as far as...
I do not know what phobia he is having. I do not understand what phobia Dr. Zakaria is having. I myself say that nothing to do with Islam.
You use the word Islam.
Those who are using the religion for this bad interest.
You
I
use the word
that word.
Just a minute, Mr. Modi. You used the word Islamic terrorism. You were actually praising us in this program.
Yes, I was saying because in India the pseudo-secularist people are not ready to raise this type of question before. But only because the Western media has started, you have adopted it.
You mean suddenly we are no longer pseudo-secularists?
So what he's trying to do is that he's happy that now whatever whomsoever he calls pseudo-secularists, that they have also now realized that really it is Islamic terrorism. That shows what really disturbs him.
Right. Mr. Parthasani, respond
I will come to what is really happening and what is called Islamic terrorism when I make my presentation. My query to Mr. Modi is that there are certain noble tenets of Islam, as you yourself remarked. Islam says you shall not harm civilians. Islam, for example, says that even if you hurt one innocent human being, that is a crime against humanity. Mr. Modi, don't you think it is right now incumbent firstly on our entire political leadership, and I particularly call on the leadership also of the Muslim community in India, to draw a distinction between the misuse of Islamic tenets by zealots in our neighborhood, on the one hand, and Pakistan in particular, on the one hand, and being very careful not to label an entire religion or an entire religious order in those terms.
I 100% agree with Mr. Parth. Because you cannot blame a religion, and one should not. And we are not against any religion, and no one should, and any Hindu can never be. This is the basic thinking of the Indian philosophy. And
yet,
that's why.
And yet you say that from 1480, Islam has used religion for militancy.
The problem is the misuse of this emotional feeling. And whether it comes through religion or something else, that is the danger to the society.
Okay, Siddharth, question.
I'll make two quick points of questions. You said no Hindu can be opposed to any religion. You yourself a few minutes ago started by separating Islamic terrorism from Islam, and then you made a judgment on Islam as being a religion which so-called downgrades other peoples and religions, etc., etc. So in other words, you are commenting negatively on the religion itself. Second question, you seem to be very enamored by the Western media's description of Islamic terrorism, quote unquote. Do you know what the Western media refers to your party as, the BJP?
Well,
they use the phrase Hindu fundamentalist. Do you accept that phrase?
We don't accept it. In democracy, they have every right to say. In democracy, they have every right to say. In democracy, why should I say that they can't say? This is what the difference between we and others. They say, if you say this, the gun is there. So I say, no, I will accept it.
Fundamentalist, right?
Pardon?
Is the Western media being pseudo-secular when they refer to the BJP as Hindu fundamentalist?
If you are going to debate on pseudo-secularism, I am ready to debate on that.
Okay, that's another issue.
But your issue was the difference. Yes, Mr. John, what do you want to ask me?
If the fear of Islamic terrorism builds up in this country, what will it do to communal relations?
As far as relations with each and every community is concerned, India is bound to have a good relation with each and every citizen of this country. If terrorism, we'll have to try to isolate this terrorist activity. We'll have to isolate terrorists. We'll have to cut their lifelines.
But how
we'll have to handle them.
How are you isolating terrorists, Mr. Modi, when every time an incident like this occurs, you raise the religious, you bring in the religious agenda? You are linking at some stage religion and terrorism.
We, as far as BJP is concerned, we never do that.
Oh my
How
God.
you are going to blame me?
You just did it.
When myself I am saying
Oh my God.
that Islam has nothing to do these things, but those who are using the Islam for this purpose are danger to the society. And if even a Hindu is using this type of activity with the help of religion, it's a danger.
But this is a dangerous road. We've seen what's happened to Sikhs in America over the last few days because they wear turbans and presumably look like Osama bin Laden. If you build this up too far, what are you going to do to relations in this country? Isn't it dangerous?
It's a pride for the world that even they don't have this much general knowledge, this American citizen. That because only they have a turban, they think that they are the Taliban people.
But you
I'm sorry for these American people.
Okay,
I'm sorry for that.
Why don't you give one assurance that during there will be an election campaign, for example, in Uttar Pradesh, you will not use the incidents of Tuesday to stir a communal divide, to label every Muslim in this country somewhere down the line as an Islamic terrorist. Are you willing to give that assurance?
It's a tragic condition in my Indian media that such a challenge to the humanity, and we are talking about the footpath politics. What we are doing when the people are talking about the challenge to the humanity, and we are talking about Uttar Pradesh and this caste and that caste.
I'm asking you, will you use it?
What footpath politics we are going to do? This is the challenge against the humanity. And we'll have to face this challenge.
Are you going to use
and
it?
talk about the humanity.
Okay, you're unwilling to answer the direct question. After the break, we'll get Dr. Rafiq Zakaria to give us a perspective from an Islamic scholar.
There has been a bit of confusion in the discussion that we had, and therefore I hope I will get your indulgence right at the outset to explain as to what is the relationship between Islam and terrorism. Now, whether you call is Islam a driving force towards terrorism or Islamic terrorism, I mean, nothing is further than truth. Islam is the antithesis of terrorism. And let me tell you that the very word Islam means peace. Quran described the Prophet as the mercy to all living creatures.
They say सर्वे अपि सुखिनः सन्तु सर्वे सन्तु निरामया सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मां कश्चित् दुर्भाग् भवेत्। ये किसी एक देश के एक समाज के लिए विश्व की मानव जात के कल्याण की कल्पना इस धरती पर हुई।
Answer his first question about kafir.
It's relevant, but let me tell him, I wish he will read my book, Discovery of God.
I am not talking about the definition.
Why are you
They
mixing?
say
Why are
those
you?
who are kafir, they have not right to live.
Why
This is what
are
they
you
thinking.
mixing the teachings of Islam
How you
by
can
what
feel the
by what some of the rulers in India did, who
Okay.
had nothing to do as far as practicing the tenets of Islam?
Okay,
is
let's look at
concerned.
what happened on Tuesday. Question, Siddharth, for Dr. Zakaria.
Dr. Zakaria, I was just wondering how much of what happened on Tuesday is the product of US policies in the Arab world, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, whether it was the reaction to what is happening in Palestine and in other Arab countries, I do not know. But if it is this Bin Laden, then there is something more sinister in it. And I don't think you can mix it up also with it, because there is a particular group which is determined to create disturbance, which is determined.
How do you explain very quickly, Dr. Zakaria, the fact is that the Al-Qaeda group which he has created has used religion all across the world, whether it's in Sudan, whether it's in Saudi Arabia, they're using it in Iraq, they want to use it in Libya, they've used it in Afghanistan. How do you explain that religion can be so easily used if you say Islam's tenets are so noble?
Do you know that who is the pioneer of modern terrorism? A terrorism which had almost disappeared. It is the Zionists, the Jews. The first terrorist attack in modern times took place on the this David Hotel in Cairo.
So you're saying that terms like Jewish terrorism are never used, we only use terrorism in the Islamic.
Do you mean to say that terrorism has not been used by the erstwhile Christians in Yugoslavia? Do you mean to say that religion has not been used even by Prabhakaran in Sri Lanka? Religion is an easy weapon for those who want to exploit it.
So in a way, Dr. Zakaria has said that they are using the religion. Now my another doubt is, when what happened in US, why these people destroyed the Bamiyan Buddha Pratimas?
Why did you
Why they
destroy
destroy it?
Why did you destroy the
And
Babri
please,
Masjid?
Mr. Siddharth, wait. Why did they destroy this? And no one country in the world,
Do you accept
Islamic country world has criticized.
Do you
And
accept-
not only that, Pakistan.
Do you accept that all religions? Do you accept that all religions have been used over the years by various groups? Yes or no, Dr. Modi?
I'm telling you, if you go to the history, if you go to the religion, only Hindu religion is concerned, as far as concerned, Hindu is not religion, it is a dharma. And there is not a
Okay,
history
that's-
record in it.
Okay.
They have done any activity against any
Okay,
religion.
we'll come back to it.
What did you do those thousands of years as far as the Dalits are concerned? What did
Let's-
you do
we're
as
digressing.
far as the Buddhists are concerned? Why are you talking
about
about
that?
it?
It's an internal
let's-
problem of the society.
Okay,
It is
just-
the weakness of my society.
let's not digress.
And we are worried
John.
about it. And
Mr. Modi,
Gandhi,
the question.
Vivekananda,
Mr. Modi, you had your-
even every Hindu
Mr. Modi, you've had your
has
say.
tried to eradicate this type of thing.
Okay,
Dr.
John.
Zakaria, given what you've just said, that every religion almost in the world has used terrorism at some time or other, why do you find it so difficult, respecting all you've just said, why do you find it so difficult not to agree with the tenet of this programme, which is that Islam is the new driving force of international terrorism? I don't see why logically you can't say yes, that too is doing it, even though Islam doesn't stand for it.
On the contrary, I said that religion
we can all
has
agree and not have a
I
good
have
fight.
said that
Islam should be subjected to this kind of scrutiny and finger pointing. I want to shift the focus slightly, because it seems to me from what you've said and from what one understands of the situation, that terrorism is essentially a political phenomenon. And I think this is true particularly of West Asia. I think it's true of Central Asia. Often people with political ambitions or political grievances may turn to religion or misuse religion for political purposes. We've seen that in India with Mr. Modi's party, for example. So what do you feel about, aren't we better off looking at terrorism as a political phenomenon rather than just trying to identify this with our
I
religion?
think it is a political phenomenon with a religious dimension.
The fact of the matter is that after the Cold War, when economic ideology of the communists proved to be a non-starter and a failure, people who are disgruntled, unhappy with life to our west, and these are largely made up of Islamic countries, turn to religion. I believe they misinterpreted the tenets of Islam. But it would be, I think, very despots or by constitutional monarchies, have they been able to meet the aspirations of the peoples, whether it's Algeria or Egypt? That breeds discontent which takes a religious dimension. But what is important is that these things have now led to a networking on a religious basis. Osama's network on a religious basis extends into the Middle East,
well,
it extends into the United States.
Wouldn't we be better off focusing on the discontent and the root causes of the discontent rather than simply having pointless debates as to whether Islam or Hinduism is better or worse?
Go wrong if you ignore the religious dimension.
No,
there is a
dimension
religion.
exists, just like it exists in Mr.
That's what Mr.
Modi's party.
आज टेररिज्म इस ताकत तक पहुंचा है, उसका कारण है कि उसमें फंडामेंटलिज्म जुड़ा है, उसी ने ये हालत पैदा की। दूसरी बात है, हम इस्लाम शब्द उपयोग करके इस्लाम शब्द का उपयोग करके गलतियां करते हैं। आपको ये समझना होगा कि मुसलमानों ने, when I say मुसलमान, it does not mean Islam, उनका एक पॉलिटिकल रोड मैप है। उन्होंने दुनिया को 3 हिस्सों में बांटा है। एक दारुल अमन, दूसरा दारुल हरब, तीसरा दारुल इस्लाम। दारुल अमन का मतलब है लैंड ऑफ पीस, जहां पर इस्लाम पहुंच चुका है वहां लैंड ऑफ पीस होना चाहिए, अथवा जहां इस्लाम कुछ करने की ताकत नहीं रखता है वहां पर दारुल अमन होना चाहिए। देन दारुल हरब, लैंड ऑफ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, जहां पर ताकत है वहां संघर्ष करो, अपना झंडा जमाओ।
Okay,
और तीसरा है
let him
दारुल इस्लाम, पूरे विश्व को इस्लाम में कन्वर्ट करना। ऐसे इरादों से पॉलिटिकल एक्टिविस्ट, those who are belong to the Islam,
He
they
must
are
respond.
doing this activity. Unless
You made your
we
point,
do not
Mr. Modi.
understand the people, we can't understand this terrorism.
Quickly respond.
अगर बंद करें तो मैं बोलूं।
बताए, आप
नहीं,
बताए।
आपको खुला रखना है, आपको बंद नहीं करना है।
देखिए, इनकी मुसीबत ये है कि ये जानते ही नहीं कि ये दारुल हरब, दारुल अमन, दारुल ये किसने शुरू किया। ये वो मुस्लिम रूलर्स ने शुरू किया जो कि अपनी हुकूमतों को एक किस्म की क्लासिफिकेशन करनी चाहती हैं। neither the classical jurists nor is there any reference to it in the Quran, nor there is any reference in the tradition, but the Hindu phobia has so gripped them that wherever they find something to malign Islam, they are very happy to present it as if
we have to take a break. We have
डॉक्टर जकरिया का एंटी हिंदू माइंड मेरे शब्दों को भी समझ नहीं पा रहा है।
We have to
कहता हूं, कुछ मुसलमानों ने,
Mr. Modi,
मैं बार-बार कहता हूं, कुछ मुसलमानों ने,
we have to take a break. We're cutting up, Mr. Modi. We're taking a break.
मैं पैदा हुआ हूं, मैं
call me anti-Hindu. Nobody has been the stoutest, the greatest opponent of Jinnah's two-nation theory. I have gone to jail during the Quit India movement. No,
fair enough,
it is necessary. In my next
डॉक्टर जकरिया आपको भी संभाल के रहना चाहिए।
Mr. Modi,
बार हिंदू फोबिया,
Mr. Modi, this is a very serious
फोबिया, आपको सुनने की तैयारी रखनी पड़ेगी। आपको सुनने की तैयारी रखनी पड़ेगी।
Okay.
आप ये नहीं कह सकते हो कि
Let's
हम आपके लिए बात
not,
करें।
please, let's not degenerate this into a debate. Yes. Can we please? Where are these so-called fault lines, clash of civilizations that you spoke about earlier?
I think Rajdeep, you've raised a very important point, and I remember that this clash of civilizations is a very dangerous concept, and I refer to a proposal by President Khatami of Iran calling for a dialogue of civilizations. I think that's what we should look at. Secondly, on Siddharth's question of our rather hasty readiness to offer military facilities, I'm quite clear in my mind that if it is established that Osama bin Laden and the Taliban were responsible for the incidents in New York and in Washington, then an international consensus will emerge to take on the Taliban. I think, let me complete, Rajdeep, I think we should join that consensus, let it build. We should join them, join the
Civilization somewhere. Islam on one side and the West on the other?
There is no clash of civilization. There is a clash of barbarism against civilization. Yes. And therefore, what has happened in America, in Washington, is the worst kind of barbaric explosion.
Civilization. So when at one side there is a terrorism, at the other side is a civilization. How we can put both on the one way?
Then why bring the religious angle in the first place? If Osama was, as long as he was a CIA creation, nobody called him a radical Islamist. Today he becomes an Islamic terrorist.
राजदीप, ओसामा बिन लादेन को ताकत कहां से मिल रही है? समर्थन कौन कर रहा है? करने वालों का प्रेरणा क्या है? जब वो उनको इस्लाम की भाषा बोलता है तब बच्चे और खड़े होते हैं उसके साथ, और कोई प्रेरणा वो एंटी अमेरिका के मूड से नहीं कर रहा है, वो कर रहा है इस्लाम की भावनाओं का दुरुपयोग करते हुए।
उसको प्रेरणा मिली पाकिस्तान से, उसको प्रेरणा मिली अमेरिका ने जो पूरे इक्विपमेंट्स, जो डॉलर, जो ये सब कुछ दिए, और इसलिए अमेरिका की भी अब समझ में आ गया है कि जो उन्होंने किया वो बहुत बड़ा ब्लंडर था।
Let's get in one more question, John.
Arthur, does this need to be seen against a wider context than just your present of crisis? Because the main focus of this terrorism is America and what it stands for, and that's also the focus of the anti-WTO demonstrators and the anti-globalization protesters of the last few years. As we've seen in Punjab and Sri Lanka, yesterday's peaceful protesters become tomorrow's terrorists, and the anti-WTO protests aren't that peaceful. Do you think that it's the poor and the dispossessed who are going to gang up? Do you see a wider problem here? Is there a bigger issue of global unrest and disenchantment to be tackled than just the Islamic point?
Well, there is certainly a problem of people adjusting to the imperatives and the realities of globalization. That's spread across the world, John. But having said that, I go back to what I said earlier. We do have a problem in our Western neighborhood. It has political dimensions, diplomatic dimensions, religious dimensions, you name it. It has to be tackled in a multifaceted manner, and I'd go along with Professor Zakaria on this. Democracies of the world
against America, against the
What is the definition of jihad? This is my first part of the question.
Well, I'll be very happy to explain to you. Jihad means a struggle. The classical jurists have divided it into two parts. Jihadul Akbar, the great struggle, and Jihadul Asghar, the smaller struggle.
Okay, you have a second part. What's the second part?
No, let me explain. What is this? You in the middle, you cut me.
No. He has a second part.
He has
a second part of the question.
He hasn't understood anything. Now let me explain this.
Okay, go on.
Now, Jihadul, the greater struggle is against temptation, against evil.
Terrorism. Mr. Modi had made a comment of isolating terrorism. So I think, how do we isolate? It is the high time. Like we should really take a
that's your
step.
question. Yes. The gentleman in that. Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
I'm not
Yes.
speaking.
Yeah, you don't understand. Come on.
Yeah. You told to this gentleman that the thing that the sentiments of the Muslims in Babri Masjid demolition, they are footpath politics, and anything being done in America or anywhere in the world, that is very good and very illicit politics.
देखिए, भारत के इनिशिएटिव के कारण 2 बार से यूएन की मीटिंग में हम लोगों ने टेररिज्म एक इश्यू बनाया।
You have a 1 minute time.
आज बिकॉज ऑफ दिस पूरे देश को आज 2 कैंप में डिवाइड करने में हम सफल हुए हैं। एक वो लोग जो टेररिज्म के अगेंस्ट हैं, दूसरे वो लोग जो टेररिज्म का समर्थन कर रहे हैं। मैं समझता हूं कि अमेरिका की ये ताजा घटनाएं उसमें और गति देगी और दुनिया 2 हिस्सों में बंटने वाली है, एक दोज हु आर विद ह्यूमैनिटी एंड दोज हु आर अगेंस्ट ह्यूमैनिटी।
Okay.
एंड दिस इज द वे यू हैव टू डू। एज फॉर द अनदर क्वेश्चन इज दिस टोटल मिसकंसेप्शन यू हैव. You don't have a correct information, and if you want to do the debate on Ayodhya, I'm ready to come wherever you want me. I'll come there and talk to you.
Sir, ask your question, gentlemen.
My question is to Professor Zakaria.
Is only linked to religion.
I don't believe.
How many of you don't believe that?
Yeah.
But what's your response?
Because if you see the historical background, like 1960s when Vietnam was attacked, then early 90s and when Iraq was attacked. Can you give it a name, a kind of a Christian terrorism? And then whatever is happened in 1992 or something like that in Babri Masjid demolition, can you give it a name, a Hindu terrorism?
Why is it, Mr. Parthasarathy? This is a view. It seems to be a minority view in this audience that when there are acts of terrorism committed by other groups, you don't give it a religious denomination.
There's a reason for that. The only religion group of countries who have grouped themselves in the world in religious terms are the Islamic countries. They have an organization of Islamic conference. The Christians don't group themselves in religious terms. The Buddhists in Southeast Asia don't group themselves. Only the Islamic countries do it. And I'll add one point, which I would like to tell Mr. Zakaria. Every time, despite our support for the Arabs, every Arab country has joined in resolutions in the OIC every year to condemn us on Kashmir.
Dr. Zakaria, answer this. Is Islam the only religion which builds this kind of universal brotherhood that can lead to a global network like the Al-Qaeda?
No, you see, I mean the Islamic countries grouping
that we've learned when it comes to tackling terrorism. When it comes to the basic subject, is Islam the driving force of terrorism? What are your final comments?
Final comments is it would be very wrong to attribute terrorism to any given religion. But the fact remains that the terrorists are coming from Islamic countries, misinterpreting Islam. It would be highly dangerous for us within India in a secular pluralistic society to give it a predominantly religious connotation.
Okay, 20 seconds are up. Your 20
My
seconds.
Muslim friends must understand that these terrorists have damaged Islam like anything. So they must disconnect themselves from these terrorists. They come out openly against the terrorists. Then only they can change the image,
Right.
and they will have to do them something.
He's told his time. Your last word.
I am so sad to hear all these things. You know, there is so much of misrepresentation. Now this discussion really has gone haywire.
Right.
Instead of, please now allow
You
me.
have 20 seconds, sir. The program is at an end. Tell us your last comment.
Please allow me.
Yes.
Instead of sympathizing with the victims, instead of thinking how to face in the future this menace, and therefore, if you'll allow me, I will quote a few Urdu couplets.
Yes, please.
जुल्म की कुछ मियाद नहीं, दाद नहीं, फरियाद नहीं, कत्ल हुए हैं हम सब, इधर किधर से कुछ याद नहीं, आखिर रोएं किस किस को, कौन है जो बर्बाद नहीं.
On that highly sobering note,
उसकी बर्बादी के सिवा कहते हैं इस्लाम ने ये किया, उन्होंने ये किया. अरे ये सोचो कि इस बर्बादी को किस तरह बचाना है.
Right. On that highly sobering note, we must end. It's been an extremely tragic week, and our thoughts must go with the victims of the tragedy. Thank you all very much for joining us on The Big Fight on this highly contentious issue. Do email us at bigfight@ndtv.com. We'll be back.